It's been a while since I wrote about how I read through the Bible and my views on that experience. During those years of me working through the Bible, I'd heard from various people that you really should be going to church. And I was, during that period of reading the Bible, as I mentioned in one of my notes, I didn't want to hear from any pastor or priest about the Bible. I just wanted it to be the Bible and me, and no intermediaries. I just wanted to reflect on it and pray about it and have understanding from God on it. Now, after I'd finished it, I felt like, okay, since I've gone through it all, now I can evaluate churches and have discernment as I go through them. You know, I'm not going into it without the experience of knowing or having gone through the Bible. So I had a lot more confidence going into visiting churches. So when I decided to start going to churches, first of all, going back many years, I was so fascinated with the idea of like, why are there so many churches? Like just the myriad denominations just fascinated with me. Their names, their histories, why they started, what group they splintered off of, who's the leadership in there. You know, that was endlessly fascinating to me. And a long time ago, I always said, you know what, if I have all the time in the world, it would be fun to start to go to these different churches just to get a feel, because every church has its own culture. Even within a denomination, even within like the Catholic Church, every church will have its own culture, and same for every denomination. But anyways, the denominations themselves have cultures, and then within every church, you know, especially when there's like a very charismatic pastor there, you know, the church will have a kind of a certain feel to it. So I decided to start going to churches around that time after I finished the Bible, reading the Bible. And so one of the, I guess you can say, intellectual heroes of mine, he's a Lutheran, and somebody else who I consider to be like a spiritual brother / father is a Lutheran. So I knew from my past that I had there are people that I respected a lot who were Lutheran. So I thought, okay, I'll go to a Lutheran church. Why not? And so I did. I found one nearby, and I went on one Sunday. If I go through every single one of these and say why I decided not to stay, oh my gosh, this will be a long video. But so I'm just going to touch upon different ones. So then I went to like a Baptist church. I'd always been curious about Baptists. And so, found one of those, went there. Both of those were nice experiences. I went to another one who I believe is technically Presbyterian. I think they don't advertise themselves as being Presbyterian anymore. But I went there, and that was an interesting experience because the head pastor like singled me out afterwards, and I guess he didn't recognize me and said, "Hey, here's my number. Let's have lunch." I took him up on it, and we actually had lunch a couple of times, and that was really cool. That was a nice experience. And by this point, let me see, what else did I go to? So after going to different churches, and I would also watch them online, like if they had streaming, because there's so many churches. I felt like to set aside the time to go on a Sunday, and I would before going, I would kind of like screen the church first by just listening to the pastor on their live stream and get a feel for what the worship style was like and all that. So I'd watched some also, like I said, online, and there's a couple I just didn't even go to because I saw like, okay, that one's a little too far out for me. So after a while of going through some different churches, I started to get a feel for like the different parameters that you can look for in a church. Like some are very charismatic, and there's a lot of speaking in tongues and like outward like show from the congregation, you know, hands in the air, and this, maybe an emphasis on like healing each other and stuff like that. And then there's like the worship style. Some was very modern, you know, like almost like a rock band on stage. Some was more modest. So I saw the different styles in that. I saw the different styles in like preaching, you know, pastoring. What they talked about, you know, the themes. Was it more like life application, like here's how you can use this to better your life? Or was it more focused on Jesus Christ and focused on God, like, hey, this is about God right now, like those kinds of things. Now, throughout this exploration period, I never went to a Catholic church. I didn't go to a Catholic church because I saw it on the list there. I would look at my list of churches to attend, and I'm like, I knew there was a Catholic church nearby, but I never bothered to go. Why didn't I bother to go? because I felt like, well, I've already been there. I've been there, done that. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten until 6th grade, and then to junior high as well, 7th and 8th grade. I had a great experience, I feel like, in that school that I went to, and I remember very vividly going to mass, as a school, as the entire elementary school, once a week. Um, and I have fond memories of that. So great experience, but I felt like, well, I already know the Catholic Church. So if I'm doing these exploration, visits, then why would I go there? I already know them. That was one reason. The other reason was because in my exploration of these other denominations, most of them, the vast majority of them being Protestant, meaning they broke away from the Catholic Church. Um, I was watching a lot of pastors and apologists talk about, why they're not Catholic and all these things. And I heard all these objections, and essentially they all had all these criticisms of the Catholic Church. And at the time I thought, oh, wow, these people really did their homework. Like, yeah, okay. They have their reasons for separating, fine. And there's a lot of like really hardcore anti-Catholic information, basically, out there from these groups, or views, I should say. And so I'd kind of gotten onto, I guess, that mentality for a while. Like, oh, okay, these are the Protestants. This is why they're like this. They're very Bible-based. And I'd heard some of the criticism, and I said, okay, that sounds fair. So I was a little more on that side of the fence at the time. And it lined up with my attitude towards the Bible at the time was, I don't want any intermediary between the Bible or between God and me. I just want it to be just read the Bible and then just a direct connection between me and God. So that was also very Protestant in spirit. Whoops. So anyways, so one day it's a Sunday, and I said, I want to go check out another church. And but I woke up late, and I was looking at the list. It was in the afternoon. I'm like, are there any churches with an afternoon service on Sunday? And I was like, yeah, it doesn't look like I'm gonna. Most of them are in the morning. And I was like, the only one who had service in the afternoon was the Catholic Church nearby me, like maybe 5 minutes away. And I thought, fine, I'll go. Like, just for completion's sake. I'm doing this survey of all the churches. Sure, I should probably revisit the Catholic Church just to check it off. Like, okay, I've been there. Been there before, but now I'm getting an update. What are they up to now? Okay, fine. So I see that they have a mass at like 5:30 in the afternoon. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. Fine. So I decided to go to that mass. And when I was there, I felt something very different and very powerful. Unlike anything I'd ever felt. And it felt like, at least for me, like I was finally home. Now, it's entirely possible that this is an effect of like familiarity. Like, I grew up, I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 6th grade, in elementary school. And maybe maybe I recognized a lot of the elements in the Mass, and perhaps that gave me some comfort. I don't know. But it certainly had an impression on me. It left an impression on me, and I wanted to go back. I went, and I felt like something, like I said, felt right, felt different, and I said, okay. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm like, wait a second, what about all the intellectual objections, theological objections that these really smart, theologians have against the Catholic Church? What am I going to do about that? But somehow my feeling at the church kind of transcended that for the moment. I said, just trust and go forward, and let's see what happens. So when the next week came by, next Sunday, and I'm deciding what church do I want to go to, I just instinctively and intuitively was just drawn, like, that's the church I want to go to. I had no desire. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still intellectually curious, and probably always will be, about the different paths people take to God and different denominations. But as far as like, hey, it's Sunday, I want to give God his time, for those purposes, I felt like that's where I want to be, is the Catholic Church. And I just never stopped going. Every Sunday I kept going. Now, as I mentioned, I had to figure out, okay, what about all of these really, thought out objections to the Catholic Church theology that people were bringing up? I thought, yeah, at some point I have to research that and kind of have that, be squared away. I was almost afraid to look like, oh my God, oh my gosh, how embarrassing are these Catholic explanations going to be? You know what I mean? Like, how are they going to possibly respond to all these Protestant objections? And so I would go and I would research, okay, whatever topic, intercession of the saints, or asking Mary to pray for us, or purgatory, you name it, all these different doctrines that the Protestants don't accept. I'm researching them all. And I was shocked to find that every single time I would research one of these objections, the answer from the Catholics was far more sophisticated and intellectually satisfying than anything I had ever seen from any Protestant pastor. And I realized these answers were always there. It was just a matter of me deciding to look. And so little by little, every single objection that I personally also had with the church was completely and utterly fully satisfied when I looked it up, when I did the research. And so that was another evolution. So first was the feeling, that intuitive feeling, like, yeah, I feel this is right. And then it was like the more like the brain side of things, like, okay, now I'm intellectually satisfied with this. And a lot of it just made sense to me. Now I want to say one more thing about my exploration of the Bible. In my original note about the Bible, I said I didn't want anybody to interpret it for me. I wanted to read it. In fact, as I mentioned, I had stopped reading commentaries. I'm just like, no, the pure Bible. I'm going to read the Bible, let it resonate with me, and meditate on it. And that, like I said, that's a very Protestant view of the Bible. Like, you read it for yourself, you decide. And I felt like through my exploration of the Bible, I was getting these, what I felt at least were personally meaningful insights into it. Like, wow, I'm seeing something there that's profound to at least to me. And it was very nice. It was it was a good experience. And this was happening over and over again. And as I was spending time, reading and reflecting and praying and getting these insights, it started to dawn on me like, oh, okay, like if I'm getting these pretty interesting insights, like, hey, maybe there's other people who've also had these insights. And then I mean, like, I just needed to humble myself a little bit and say, like, hey, yeah, those guys called the Church Fathers? Yeah, maybe they had a thing or two. Maybe they also spent some time thinking, praying, reflecting, and realizing, having some insights about the Bible. And I thought to myself, sure, I can go lock myself away in a cave and just reflect on this by myself, and that's fine. But I don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's it's a beautiful thing when we share insights with one another. And so I thought, okay, in the same way that I've now visited a bunch of churches, I should also be able to now visit a bunch of different views on the Bible and use discernment with these as well. And in that same way, as I would visit different commentaries on the Bible, I over time was gravitating more towards the Catholic interpretation of the Bible, as opposed to a lot of times Protestants and Catholics, they agree on obviously different parts of different verses and whatnot. But when there was a difference, I tended to side more with, I would say, the Catholic interpretation. Anyway, that's an update for where I'm at. Thanks for listening.